being in Illinois, you don't get to fish for trout too often, but I'm in a club where it has a bunch of strip pits, so I end up fishing for a lot of panfish. Love bluegill on the fly rod, so keep looking for flies, and I came across this as a Clouser. They call it a bluegill fly. Some people call it a stillwater fly or a freshwater Clouser, but it uses a little bit different. It uses bead chain eyes rather than lead eyes, so it doesn't sink as fast. So when you're in still water and not moving water, it doesn't work as, sink as fast. Let's see here if I can change the video. Somehow it got muted. I don't know how that happened. Anyway, uses a 3X long hook, and because of the bead chain, it does float hook up. You tie it kind of sparse, and anyway, hopefully there's a few tricks here that I can, at least a few things that I found that helps. So we'll get first of all, we debarb the hook. I always debarb all my hooks anymore. Partly because if I hook myself, it's easier to get out. So you always want to leave enough room at the front of the hook to tie everything off. So you want to start about a third of the way back. If you need to, it always is good to start with, use a ruler. Measure your hook shank, figure out what a third is, and take a look at it for a few times just till you get it comfortable to where you want to start. We can go ahead and start with I'll start the thread here. Like I say, about a third of the way back. Get the thread started. Trim off your tag. And like I say, I'm using the bead chain. So you take two pieces, you cut the chain. People have probably done this before. Try to get it up here where you can see it. And everybody, if you know how to tie lead eyes on, you do the bead chain the same way. I put it on, do a couple of figure eights to get it lined up, a few more figure eights just around. And then I kind of go under the hook, over the bead chain, under the hook, over the bead chain. Do that a few times. And then I can go around over the hook and under the bead chain to kind of lock it in. And then wrap a few times around. It should be fairly sturdy. Take a look, make sure it's lined up on the top. And if you're doing this to fish with, it's always a good thing to throw some kind of a head cement, Sally Hansen's or whatever on it, just to kind of lock it in. At this point, we get to where we start to tie on our first bit of bucktail. So on the bottom, which should be the top right now, use a white bucktail. And I tie it kind of sparse. Wonder if I change back the video here. So I don't go too thick with it. I tie it sparse. And I tend to tie towards the tip more. It seems like maybe if better bucktail it wouldn't work, but or it wouldn't be a problem, but I find it flares more if you tie it, cut the tail from the more on the base of the tail. Then you grab it up towards the front and pull the short hairs out. And then you look at it, if you've got some extra long ones, you can always pull those out. So the ones you are left with are all kind of an equal length. And change back here. Something I forgot to mention, a couple of things. I find the hair is rather slick and sometimes it tends to fall off. So if I wrap under and over on my thread, so if you leave it behind the chain, bead chain to start with, and also the original calls for a wax thread. So without a wax thread, I use a little dubbing wax, just a light wrap on it to help keep it from sliding off. Then you go about 2 shank lengths. You put it down on top, and then when you come over and come in front of and take a loose wrap, the fact that it starts off behind the bead chain really helps to hold it in place. And then you can just wrap loosely, a couple of wraps. Then you can pull it up and trim it on an angle. And I cut my thread. All right. Things do happen. All right. We'll try that again. And actually, I forgot to say, sometimes it helps to cut it on an angle. So if you take your scissors up and then tilt it towards the eye when you cut it and put it down, that gives you a little ramp sometimes. So it helps to smooth out. Not working great, but then you come behind the eye and give it one full wrap and a couple of open spirals back to the bin and give it a wrap and then come back up again. Come up in front of the eye, wrap to the eye. And if you got a couple of wayward hairs, you can trim it. Then if you got a rotating vise, you can rotate it. You throw in a couple of strands of crystal flash, whatever looks good. In this case, I'm using a root beer crystal flash. Pull out about 3 strands. What's a good place to show it here? And Just around your thread. Tie it in. Put an equal number on each side of the hook. And kind of the same way as before, throw the last loop around the back of the eye. Put a little bit of dubbing wax on the thread. And I'm going to use a yellow bucktail, but you can use anything you want. Probably a little bit more than the first group. But again, being sparse is better than being too thick. Again, grab it in the front and pull out the short hairs. And you make this one the same length as your front one, your white one. And put it there, tip your scissors a little bit forward to give it a little bit of an angle. And this is the part that's hard to keep from sticking the hook in your finger. Come over. Start wrapping in some tighter wraps as you go. Make a bit of a head. Then you can whip finish. Trim your thread. And again, give it a coating of some kind of cement, Sally Hansen's in this case. Just keep it from coming apart. Then you go back to where you had your, you can rotate it and look at your crystal flash. And you want that to be just a little bit longer than your tail. And you cut that off. And prune it out a little bit there. And that is a Clouser. It won't sink as fast as some of them. Didn't work out as good as I would have liked, but anyway.